Alright. Hello, everybody. Today on the podcast, we got.
Hello, it's me, Emperor AP. For those of you that don't know, I run the Empire of Eternia, a micronation in North Alabama in the U.S.
Dang, it must be hot up there.
It sure is. It sure is. Today's, what, in the 90s, 89, 90, something like that? It's a little
Dang,
warm.
I can't believe I would not want to go over there. I'm a Canadian. I'm good with my cold weather.
Oh, very cool, very cool. I would love to go to Canada. One, because I definitely think a change of weather would be nice at some point. I don't think I could do the reverse either. I don't think I could be in freezing cold, but like summers in Canada, I bet would be nice. Also, just the free healthcare stuff
Free
and like
healthcare.
it sounds nice.
It's expensive up there.
I bet, I bet.
So I heard you got a plot of land in
Yes, sir.
Eternia.
Yes, sir. Our first territory vitae.
Dang. So maybe people were wondering. I don't know if they were wondering, but what government type is if you were to make a government, what type would it be?
That's a great question. So Eternia has a government. It is an absolute monarchy. So the way that it works, uh, in very brief, we have the monarch, which is me. Then we have the houses. The houses are broken up into effectively partitions of everyday life and kind of government structuring that we need for Eternia. So right now, the two houses that we have are the House of Treasure and the House of Others. The House of Treasure deals with economics, businesses, anything associating monetary transaction in Eternia, and then the House of Others deals with media, deals with recruitment, stuff like that. So as we continue to grow and expand, we're going to be adding additional houses, and then beyond that, what we would like to do in Vitae is to add a lordship. Eventually, once we would have a enough people in Vitae, enough residents, as we would call them, people who build houses there and live there permanently, we would want to establish one of those people and appoint them as a lord of the territory, just to kind of watch over it while the main government can't be there.
Very cool. Can you be removed as like the head?
That's a great question. So in this stage, no. That doesn't mean that it will be that way forever, though. So as an absolute monarchy currently, in a way, I rule with an iron fist. Starting and developing Eternia, and I think this is the case for a lot of micronations. You really want to make sure that your vision is kind of held to, and so that's something that takes a lot of effort because you'll have plenty of people who come in and will develop things and will be excited to do things. But then if you aren't careful, that can change things very quickly and can kind of cause divisions between people. So a lot of the time, micronations choose to have some kind of direct control over their visions, and so in that way. We're an absolute monarchy. Everything that happens in Eternia, I try to do with connection to the citizens and to our government, but ultimately I have the last word. What I would like to do after I die, or after the next person becomes the emperor, I'd like to try to find a way, not necessarily through constitutional means, but maybe through some sort of, uh, I guess, just almost direct voting system to allow people to uh, effectively point out their favorability with the leadership. If they don't like the leadership, that eventually they can find an easier way to pull those people out or to rein in their power. I haven't fully decided on that yet. I've always tried to figure out, okay, well, if I pass on Eternia to someone else, um, do I just appoint another emperor? Do I make it a democracy? How does this work? And I've been trying to rein that in a little bit and try to give at least more power to the people after I pass, because you never know what people will do after you're out of office, so to speak.
Very true. It's just like the British government. They have a very similar thing.
Agreed. Agreed. Well, and that's an interesting one as well because the queen having significantly less authority and being taken out of the government is definitely a valuable approach. I think it allows people who are fond of the queen to still and the royal family to still have their kind of figurehead, their kind of their mascot, so to speak, without necessarily um, uh, keeping the government in that kind of tight knit a design.
What type of people do you think should start an empire or their own micronation?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think anybody can start a micronation. I would say I don't recommend to everybody to start a micronation. Um, and that's kind of different, I suppose, in the way that you can come from any background. And as long as you have an interest to learn about a lot of other different types of backgrounds, you'll be fine as a micronationalist. You can do it. It's a lot of hard work, especially if you're trying to do something that can really change a community, if you're trying to do something that can really build a large organization and get funding. That's pretty difficult. The biggest thing you'll need to remember there, if this is like a DIY build a micronation course, I guess I would say, is um, to make sure that you have the interest to learn things that you don't already know. For example, I come from a background in physics and engineering. But I have had to learn things about financing. I've had to learn things about businesses. I've had to learn things about, foreign trade and diplomacy, and about public speaking, and so about making YouTube channels. There's so much stuff that you have to try and figure out that you would have had potentially no interest, or at least no initial inclination to start. But as far as people who would develop micronations, I would say if you're interested in developing a micronation, look out there to see if there is any other micronation that you would even consider joining who has a similar interest to you, as far as what your politics are, as far as what your goals and visions are. Because I think a lot of micronationalists come into this feeling like they're very unique and that their idea is 100% original. But a lot of the times in micronationalism, we find that there are like 800 micronations that are very, very similar. And unfortunately, 780 of them may not survive. So, past a year, past 2 years, something like that. So, I think it's really important for people to try to join micronations as much as they can when they start out, even if they decide later on to leave. Joining that first micronation will improve that micronation, and it'll give people the ability to learn about what they like and what they don't. So if they decide to make one later on, they have better contacts, better skill development, that sort of thing.
Very, very interesting. Uh, have you heard about? I don't remember the name of the story, but it was right near the shore of Britain. There was this old World War II, not boat, but it was like a station right near Britain, and the people. If I remember it, I'll pull it up on the screen uh, when this is done. Uh, but they basically got independence from Britain because they weren't in British waters nor
Sealand,
Irish.
yeah.
Sealand, yeah. There we go. It was very, very interesting. They actually, someone tried to take it from another station or whatever. It was a whole big thing. It was amazing.
Oh, I completely agree. It's really interesting. I haven't kept up with Sealand as much as I would like to, but I do know they're still up and running and doing a lot of stuff. The one of the things I'd been trying to figure out for a long time. I think a lot of people look up to Sealand as like this was because they had interactions with the British government, the German government, with the like hostage situation they were in and all that. It's I think something that a lot of micronationalists feel like, oh, if I could get that kind of independent, that'd be crazy. I know a while back, it may have been like 2010s or 2012 or somewhere around there. They were like trying to sell the platform. They had like it was a large amount. It was like in the millions of pounds, but they were trying to sell the platform. And so I'd be curious if they're still trying to do that. Last time I saw one of their Instagram things, they were like building on it. So I don't know if they're trying to like refurbish it or what, but it's an interesting project. I don't know what the I guess what the final goal is, because they have that limited space. But I guess if they could start like businesses on the shore that would fund it and kind of build it up, it would be really crazy.
It would. Oh yeah, did you know in Sudan and Egypt there's a tiny strip of land which owned by no other country, so you could technically take it still.
Is that beer to will or whatever?
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of micronations do that as well. It's really wild. The micronational community is super creative, but they do that. They'll hit up beer to will, Antarctica, places in space, and then sometimes just their own backyard or whatever. But there are particular ones that, like you pointed out, people have very little to no claim on. Specifically, Mary Birdland in Antarctica and Beer to Will. The one thing that's been weird is that there are plenty of micronations who claim Beer to Will, and very few, if any, that I know of who are actually in that region, like who live in that area. I saw one from a while back that it was a group of people from Texas who claimed Beer to Will, and I was very curious about that because I was like, I don't know, like if you guys go to Beer to Will, are you gonna like get out and start expanding and moving right there? Or are you staying in Texas and expanding your like empire and then just like supporting people who live in Beer to Will? I want to know the dynamics. I feel like a lot of micronations claim it, but they don't have that go-to plan for how to move forward in like the hostile arid environment. So if somebody lived there and like already was doing stuff, I'd be super impressed with a Beer to Will micronation.
Yeah, you would have to get. I don't know how you would do it. You have to get water from like Egypt and Sudan, about or Somalia. But that's the only places you could really get water near there.
Absolutely. And I would be curious. A lot of people say that it's like a not claimed land. I don't know how many people actually live there currently. Like if you showed up, there may not be a ton of people, but would there be somebody who's already there or who's like right next to it who'd be like, "Hey, you're actually on my land over there."
Yeah, I guess you would have to like bribe some people to join you.
Yeah, it would be interesting.
It would. So the micro countries, right?
Yes, sir.
We had they have one of the best communities. I've been talking around with the community, and it's just one of the best.
Hey,
You,
that means a lot.
yeah, you guys have a good community, and I respect it a lot.
I appreciate it. I think uh, there's definitely a ton of creativity in the community. There are a ton of people who are really supportive of each other's dreams because I think everybody comes from a place of sort of people being in disbelief at what you're trying to do. You're trying to develop a community all by yourself. You're trying to build, your own culture, your own politics, sometimes your own language and stuff like that. It can get pretty wild, I think, to people who don't know what it is. And so for uh, for micronationalists, I think the baseline is generally acceptance because they want to learn from other people who are trying to do the same thing and find acceptance themselves. But at the same time, the one thing that the community always starts to get up in arms about is when you talk about politics. Everybody comes to it from a particular view of this is how I think things should be done. So once you start talking to people too much, you will learn their political opinions pretty quickly. I know in the community there's a big like anti-communist stance for some reason. There's a big like anti-monarchy stance. There's a big anti-democracy. Pretty much like any micronation government that you could try to form, you're gonna find a group of people who are like, we hate that for this and this reason.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it can definitely be fun, but sometimes it is a little bit of a headache to find a group of people that uh, you can get along with, but that also have similar interests and desires as you to work with. Sometimes that even goes into like regionality. I was lucky enough when we first started the channel, maybe a year into it, I ended up getting in contact with somebody who was literally like in the next town over from me. So it was really exciting to get to do stuff with them.
Oh,
And that was my first like in person encounter with another micronationalist.
I do remember a video of that, and you guys had some beef, didn't you? You guys had a little bit of a thing.
Oh, not the same micronation. So the if I remember what you're talking about, so the first micronation that we ever really like worked with and developed stuff with is Parkistopia. They were like a communist micronation that was in South Alabama. But then the guy ended up moving to like Ecuador. Like he just like isn't around
Wow.
anymore. He still posts stuff. Yeah, I still follow him as a person, like on Instagram and stuff, but I don't see like much micronational stuff. He's just doing his own thing. But the group I think you're thinking of is Stamaria. They're in the UK. I've never like met with them in person.
Interesting.
Yes, sir.
Uh, I think that's about it for the podcast, though. We're going on the let's see, the 20-minute mark. Wow.
Hey, very cool.
All right, so that's the end of the podcast, guys. This was the Empire of Eternia. Do you want to shout out anything?
Sure. If you guys want to check us out, we're the Empire of Eternia on YouTube. We are on Twitter and Instagram. I think both as Eternian Empire. We're on TikTok. I think as the Empire of Eternia as well. We got all the social medias. We're doing all the medias. And then as well, we're trying to go to MicroCon coming up. That's our first big opportunity to bust into the micronational scene, to go figure out kind of what all these other groups around the world are doing, and to start talking to some people. So we're going to be doing that August 5th through the 7th, I believe. That's coming up. So check out some content we'll have on that. I'll be giving a speech and doing stuff. So I'm excited about it, and I hope you guys come to learn a little bit more about micronationalism and the different groups of people that are out there.
All right, it's been a very big pleasure talking with you, but sadly, we have to end the podcast.
Oh,
Uh,
yes, sir.